think about those negative things that are coming at you. And I'm thinking about them in my life over the last week. There's been a ton of negative that's come at me. But guess what? I still got a chip in a chair, man. I'm not out of the game. I'm still in it. And I still have an opportunity to win. So how do I take that chip and that chair and turn it into positive and grow that single chip into a stack? Tell you what I'm doing. Back to gratitude, surrounding myself with the right people, having conversations, talking about it openly. Movement.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Grit Meets Growth podcast, where we bring you inspiration and insights focused on getting uncomfortable, making things happen, and creating a magnetic life. If you enjoy the messages you're hearing here, please leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of the podcast. With that, let's get after it.
What are you doing in Highland this morning?
Up and down on the hills.
Nice.
So it was gross, just thick and gross, and I sweat like a banshee. So I got back in the truck to drive home and take a shower, and just gross.
Yuck.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
You getting back into doing that?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back in October.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
You gave me the nudge.
Why is that?
I think I was a little waffly. We had a conversation about it a while back. I was a little waffly about whether I was going to go back or not. Maybe I'd wait a year and whatever. And you said something about like, why wouldn't you just go right now? Like, if you can, why not just go? So, yeah. So
Life's short, man.
Yep. And a trip like that, like physically, I can do it right now. So why not just do it when I can do it rather than wait for something to happen where I can't?
Well, and who knows what's going to happen in another year?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
You know, keep putting stuff off, and eventually you don't have the ability to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Something
window
else comes up, things change, right?
Life's windows close really fast. And really unexpectedly sometimes, and then you get caught wishing you had done stuff that you didn't do. So,
well, and then you go on a trip like that, or on my trip last week, and it's absolutely amazing. And you're like, I don't want to go back to reality. I want this to be my new reality.
yeah. So
because everything just goes so well. You're just having, we just had so much fun. We put on a ton of miles, which the riding piece is what I love to do. And we're in amazing roads, no frost heaves, curves for days. We're seeing a lot of amazing scenery. We're experiencing, we experienced a lot of great things, whether it was museums, whether it was distilleries, whether it was restaurants. We met a lot of great people along the way, right? You start looking at all of these things, you're like, man, like this is epic. This is like the definition of epic. And then you come back to reality. And you come back to your job and everything's waiting for you because you've completely unplugged and decompressed for 10 days. And you come back and everything's waiting for you. And some of things aren't necessarily good. There's some challenges that have come up. There's challenges on the home front. It's like reality comes rushing back at you at 150 miles an hour, and you're going, I just don't want this, man. I don't want this. I just want to go back to as you say, the top of the mountain, right? Maybe we want to have some conversation and definition a little bit around what that top of the mountain is.
well, and just to clarify, so you're coming off of how many days were you guys on the bikes?
9 days.
So 9 days, on the motorcycles, exploring someplace you've never been before with two really good friends. Like, that's mountaintop kind of stuff. Those are those epic experiences, like you said, where everything turns off for a little bit. All the crap that is, and I'm going to say this and it's going to sound terrible, but all the crap that is life, the struggles, the challenges, all of this stuff that we deal with on a daily basis that takes our attention and fogs our vision and everything that goes along with that. You get to turn it off for a little bit, take a vacation from it, and go have this mountaintop epic experience. Like, it's similar to the time we spent in Nepal, where it was literally a mountaintop experience. We were off the grid, we were in the mountains, and we were exploring probably the most beautiful place I've ever been. And I'm excited to go back there. We were just talking about that. I'm excited to go back this coming October and go revisit it because I really enjoyed it there. But the problem with these mountaintop experiences is you can't stay on top of the mountain. Like, and if you take Nepal and Everest and that kind of, like, you really amp that up big time, you physically can't stay on top of the mountain. If you stayed on top of Mount Everest for too long, you would just die. You'd hit the death zone, you'd die. There's not enough oxygen there. So you get up to the top of these mountaintops and you enjoy the view and you enjoy everything it took to get there, but then you have to come back down. And coming back down to reality sucks. Okay, Ken.
And this was one of those mountaintop experiences for me. We're in the Smokies, we're in the Blue Ridge. Like, it's mountains. While smaller than what you experienced in Nepal, it's still the same concept. Right? Which kind of comes back to that whole, there are cycles in life that we deal with and that we experience. Whether that is, cycles with your friends, cycles with things, positive and negatives happening, right? Some days you just feel like all these negatives and all this negative energy is coming at you. And there's days where nothing but positive energy. And I think for me, I'm a bit of experiencing coming from this trip. I'm experiencing a bit of negative, or at least what I feel is negative in every which way I turn. But having self-awareness to say, and I go back, I'm trying to go back to gratitude for myself and go, okay, there's all this negative happening. What's all the positive? What are the positive things? Right? I've got a solid marriage. I've got great friends that I can call up and never feel bad about telling them how I'm feeling. And not just that they're feeling similar, but giving resources to talk you through it and help you through it and ground you. Positive stuff that's going on, at work. Yeah, you get back and it's like all this stuff's coming at you and you feel like it's negative. There is a ton of positive that's still, part of that. So really trying to embrace the gratitude for the positive that's going on, and honestly, gratitude for the negative, because it's that negative that's really going to help us grow. I've said it on here before. It's kind of one of my mantras, right? The situation doesn't make your character. It's how you react to it that builds your character. And so understanding that there's gratitude in both the positive and negative and how we deal with that.
A couple of paths to go down with that. The gratitude piece, there's always going to be the negatives. And sometimes it feels like there's a lot of negatives. When you step back from that a little bit, you talked about self-awareness. When you step back from the negatives just for a little bit and take like a 30,000 foot view of life, you realize that there's probably 2, 3, 4 negatives. And sometimes those negatives can be pretty massive, but there's 2 or 3, 4 negatives that are at play. And then surrounded by that, there's a ton of stuff to be grateful for. There's like tons and tons of stuff to be grateful for. We talk a lot about comparison and how it's really easy to get stuck in cycles of comparison. Like, I'm going to compare up and I see people who have all these great things. You can compare down, and you can take your situation and you compare down, you can go, you know what? I can think of a handful of people that have it worse than me right now. I have a lot to be grateful for. Those moments where we grab the thoughts and take them captive and then say, okay, I don't have to think about this. I got a lot to be grateful for. I'm going to think about that instead. Way easier said than done. But yeah, go ahead.
No, for sure. And we need to stop looking outside for happiness, outside of us for happiness. Look internal. Bring that back inside. Eliminate that from your, eliminate those negative thoughts that come from, I'm not doing enough. I should be doing that. Look at these people have all of this. They're doing these kind of activities, and bring it inside and go, what are you doing? What is working for you? They may be at a completely different place than you are. And that's okay. Do what's working for you and, help yourself grow. And the only way that you can do that is to bring that back in to a place of gratitude and self-awareness and understanding. But there are going to be those moments when you're down and you need something to make a change. And it's not out there on the internet, right? Go for a walk, jump in a cold plunge, like use your body to override your mind. I was watching a thing, Mel Robbins talking about that today. It's completely possible. And we've said that before, right? I think, even Bedros Keuilian says that a lot about, when you're anxious, when you're experiencing anxiety, move, take that first step. We've talked a lot about that. You don't have to see the entire staircase. All you have to do is take the first step. Move your body, change your perspective, use your body to override your mind. You and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday too, and you brought up that coming back off of the trip, you had spent a little bit of time journaling and just writing down some of the highlights of the trip. I think there's some power in that too. Like I did the same thing coming back from that first Nepal trip where I spent some time, even in the airport on the way home, writing down some of the highlights of the trip and trying to capture like, hey, this was an awesome trip. There were some good things. You could lean back into that later. And when you're having those down moments, you can say, you know what, I got to experience this thing and it was awesome. And then the flip side of that is, and I was reading through some stuff yesterday about the Stoics and kind of how the Stoics thought about the world. And one of the things that they brought up was bad things are going to happen. You can't control it. Those negative things that hammer at you are going to happen. And when you get to a point where you have to expect bad things are going to happen, I get to choose what I'm going to do with them. And if I can look at when those challenges come and say, this is training me for something else, it's going to make me stronger, it's going to get me through it, doesn't mean it doesn't suck. But you get to frame up and you get to choose how you look at those challenges. And like you said, gratitude is an easy way to frame that up and be like, I'm going to find a way to be grateful for this challenge and where it's going to take me rather than the hole it's got me in right now. Yeah. And I think too, that's part of our, this podcast is all about growth, right? It's all about growth of us and as individuals, and growing in maturity is really just about accepting the things that we can't change. There are going to be things in our life that we can't change. And how many times in your life do you spend cycles and time and effort worrying about those things? You can't change them. It's going to happen. The positives and negatives are going to come at you, whether you like it or not. It's just part of the cycle. So growing in maturity is accepting that those cycles happen, that there are going to be deaths and rebirths, that there are going to be ebbs and flows, right? However you want to coin it, that the big wheel of life is perpetually spinning. And we're not all spinning at the same rate. There's going to be times when we do, right? There's going to be that alignment between two people, but sometimes it's not going to be that way. So maturity is really about understanding those. Growth is about understanding that those things happen using that gratitude to ground us in that, and using our bodies to override our mind away from those negative thoughts.
You brought up earlier, and this points back to resilience, which is really what we're talking about here. You brought up the chip in the chair earlier this morning when we were talking. Unpack that a little bit, because I'm going to hang on to that for a while now.
Yeah. So this is it comes from the Michael J. Fox documentary, the recent one. I think it's out on Apple Plus or whatever. And I just caught a clip of it. And there was a point and he's discussing a point in his life when he was really, really down on his luck. He barely had any money to his name. He didn't have enough money to buy food. He was somehow getting Smucker's jelly packets from IHOP. That was what his meals were. He's like, I'm going to have to walk to the airport, just down on my luck. He says, but then I realized, he says, I have a chip in a chair. What does that mean? A chip in a chair. And he says, in the game of poker, as long as you have a chip and a chair to sit in at the table, you're still in the game. As long as you have a chip and a chair to sit in at the table, you're still in the game. That's pretty powerful stuff. Think about those negative things that are coming at you. And I'm thinking about them in my life over the last week. There's been a ton of negative that's come at me. But guess what? I still got a chip in a chair, man. I'm not out of the game. I'm still in it. And I still have an opportunity to win. So how do I take that chip and that chair and turn it into positive and grow that single chip into a stack? Tell you what I'm doing. Back to gratitude, surrounding myself with the right people, having conversations, talking about it openly. Movement. It's helping. But you got to be willing to fight. As long as you have that chip and that chair, you got an opportunity to fight.
I think there's another layer to the chip, and I think it is a belief in the chip. I think we all have our chips, right? There's a belief we need to have on the inside that our chip can win. That we believe there's something better. We talked about hope a couple episodes ago. The chip represents hope that we can win. We can start to change the path of the game. And how many times, we used to do video games for World Poker Championship. And so for a while I got into watching poker on ESPN. It was super interesting. And you would watch games where somebody's stack would start to dwindle and where they got down to a point where they didn't have many chips left. And it was interesting because there were moments where they would lose everything for sure, but there were moments where they would come from that small stack and they would battle back and they would fight back. And they believed that small stack represented an opportunity to win. And you could tell the players that when the stack got small, they started to tap out and give up. And then there was a whole other set of players that, as long as they had chips on the table, they believed that they could win. They believed they could fight back. They believed they could get that stack back up. And I think the belief part is huge. And sometimes we find that on the inside. Sometimes friends help us believe and help us see what's possible. But you have to have this belief that when you're down in the valley, there's a way to get back up. And that's really what this is. You're going to have mountaintop moments. You're going to have valley moments. We all do. And you can't skip the valley. It doesn't exist. It's not possible. You're going to end up in the valley at some point, and it's okay. And then you you look at your chips. I'm combining like two really weird analogies, but
No, for sure. But when you're in that valley, that's when you grow, right? That's what we talk about a lot. Those cycles happen for a reason, right? It is that death, that rebirth kind of scenario. And looking at that valley as that place that, it's dark, right? But where do plants go to start their push? They go to a dark place, right? They're in the ground, man. They're under the earth. They're buried in the earth, but they pop up and rise. But even when they do that, at the end of the season, they return back to the earth, right? I mean, it's one of these, it's again a cycle of life. Talking about the poker players and those ones that that have the ability to make that small stack rise again, right? That's understanding that sometimes in poker there is a bit of luck that happens, but you also have to have faith in your own abilities to be able to make that happen. It's kind of like the bird, right? The bird doesn't land on the branch worried that the branch is going to break, because he doesn't care. The branch breaks, he knows his ability to fly is there. Just be the bird. Know that you have it inside you to come out of that valley, to come out of that darkness. And you're going to grow along the way. Have that self-awareness and that understanding in your own capabilities to be able to do that.
But and sometimes we forget we can fly. Sometimes when we're sitting on the branch and the branch is holding us up, we forget what we're capable of because we don't have to tap into it. And then all of a sudden something happens and the branch snaps. And we realize pretty quick, oh, I am capable of flying. I'm capable of more than what I thought. I have more in me than what I gave myself credit for. I think about the valleys. I think about a divorce. I think about getting laid off from a job. I think about launching an agency and having clients come in and out and having some successes and some failures along that path. There's been plenty of valleys. And I think both of us, as we're having conversations about valleys, I think we both have had plenty of them personally to be able to talk about these and have some, like, we've been there before. We've been there, got the t-shirt, like we've been in the valley before. But I can say personally, and I know you're going to agree with this, every valley I've been in, when I came out of it, I was stronger.
Yeah. And you're going to keep being more valleys, right? It's unnatural to think that we're never going to be in a valley again, right? When you talked about earlier about being on the mountaintop, right? You talk about climbing Everest. You get to the top of Everest, you can't stay there. You'll run out of air. You have to come back down. We're going to be in those valleys time and time again. I think the key is, how do we shorten that time? And that's where, for me, as I look at it, that's kind of where that maturity comes from. It's having that self-awareness to understand, yep, I'm in a valley. Embrace it. Be grateful for that. Ask, why am I here? What am I supposed to learn from this? What skills do I have already that can help me dig out of this valley? What skills do I need to acquire that's going to help me dig out? And focus on that. Focus on you. Focus on your abilities. Have faith in your abilities. Have hope that this valley is not going to last forever.
Sometimes those, when we're in the, I love what you just said, where you're like trying to figure out, what am I supposed to learn in the valley? And sometimes I've had those moments where I'm in a valley and I'm trying to sometimes ask God, like, what are you trying to teach me here? Mm-hmm. Like, what are you trying to refine me? How are you trying to make me stronger? What am I supposed to pick up while I'm down here that you're maybe trying to give me? And I think it's hard because hearing what I'm supposed to learn in the valley requires us to get still and get quiet. And we've talked about in previous episodes about making time for quiet, making time for still, meditating, prayer, whatever your deal is. But like, I think this is a conversation I had earlier in the week. We get proud of how busy we are. We get proud of how many hours and how much stuff we can pack into a day. And from a self-awareness perspective, if you're not making time to get still and get quiet and slow down and make that time to think and make that time to learn and ask questions when you're in the valley, it's easy to want to just claw yourself out of the valley. I want to get out of here as fast as I can. But there are some lessons probably down in the valley for you. Don't leave them behind. Like, figure out, what am I supposed to learn while I'm down here? You're going to be physically stronger, mentally stronger, but like, there's some teaching moments down there in there for you too. Like, what's the valley have for me?
That's the hardest piece for me. It's just to listen. Ask the question, what is it that you want me to learn from this scenario? And then shut up and listen. That's the hardest part. I like to talk. I've got lots to say. But you gotta get quiet and you gotta listen. And that is something that I'm actively working on.
I think it's hard. You and I are both in the same boat. We got a lot to share, a lot to say. I think our minds spin at a pretty aggressive pace. And to slow it down and spend some time with whatever it is we're supposed to learn. I struggle with it all the time. I like noise. Like, I have noise on all the time. Like, there is constantly noise in my world and in my space. And for a long time, it's up until probably recently, for a long time, I was very uncomfortable with quiet. And I'm learning, I'm getting there, but it's been a journey to get there. So yeah. So what do you do between now and the next mountaintop experience? How do you fill that space?
Yeah. I think it comes back to embracing the monotony, right? Embracing the process. Coming back to those things that ground me. Readying myself for that experience. Because the reality is, if we don't go through all of that minutia and BS to climb out of the valley, we'll never experience the mountaintop the way it's meant to be.
The minutia and the monotony, we have to find ways to be content and happy in every day. And I'm thinking a little bit about the last trip that I took with Christina. And so we're gone, we turn everything off, and it's just the two of us, and we had an awesome time. And then we come home, because you can't just stay on vacation all the time. So you come home and you get back into, I have to go to work, you have to go to work. Somebody's got to make dinner, the kids have to be here, grandma's got to get picked up, like all the stuff, right? Dogs got to get walked. The grass has to get mowed, the normal monotonous stuff. And you're like, to be able to find moments within that are much smaller. They're not mountaintops. They're maybe like little mini hills or bumps, but to be able to find moments in there where you can find joy in the everyday, because not every day is a mountaintop day. Every day is where you're going to spend the majority of your time. So finding your joy and your contentment in that, I think, is really important. So,
yeah. And, all these analogies come to light, right? The storm doesn't ever last forever, right? The storm never lasts forever. Every storm ends. It depends on whether you want to Try to run away from the storm or run into the storm? Right? We've had that conversation about the cows and the the bison, right? The cows run, they see the storm coming and they run away from it. It'll eventually catch up to them, but they keep running away and they stay in this crap storm for a long time. Whereas the bison runs at the storm, knowing that it's going to suck bad, but I'm only going to make it suck bad for a short period of time because I'm going to run through it. And on the other side, it's going to be sunshiny. So I'm going to spend, the bison's going to spend less time in that storm than the cow is. So figure out how to be the bison.
Well, I think it was even you that talked maybe a handful of weeks ago about being on a motorcycle trip and knowing, like you could see on radar that there was rain coming and trying to kind of a little bit try to outrun the rain. And it was hard to do. Like you couldn't really outrun it. So sometimes you just have to like heads down, go right into the storm and suck it up.
And there was a point in that day that we turned right into the storm. And part of me was going, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? We got through it and it was fine. No storm is going to ever last forever. But we owe it to ourselves to dive into it, try to make it as short as possible, knowing that there's going to be things that we can't change about it. And have faith in ourselves and our capabilities and be grateful for those opportunities that we have to be able to push through that.
But I think the moral of this story is like, if you're on the mountaintop, enjoy the freaking mountaintop. When you're there, soak in every moment. Every bit of it, soak it in. When you're down in the valley, find ways to get out of it. And in the process, look for the lessons that you're going to learn that are going to make you stronger. And when you're between the two, if you're in the everyday, find ways to be content and happy in the everyday. Find those moments where you're not on the mountaintop, you're not in the valley, but you're just happy.
I think the key is, just as you said, John, is really to look for the lessons in all of it. There are lessons on the mountaintop. There's things that we can bring back, lessons that we've learned, things that we want to do again. There's lessons in the valley. Figure out how we can get out of that, relying on our on our own intuition, on our own capabilities, and digging ourselves back out of that so that we can get to those lessons on the mountaintop.
Yeah.
And embracing the lessons of every day along the way. They're there as well. We have to just get quiet and listen. Whether we're on the mountaintop, whether we're in every day, or whether we're in the valley, we have to just stop and listen.
Absolutely, man. That is the key to it. It's a tip on that. I've started to journal, and I have 10 or 15 minutes every morning that I give to it. And some days I write down a lot, some days I write down a little. It depends on the day. But I spend some time reflecting on the last day, spend some time reflecting on what the day ahead looks like. And I just sit with my thoughts for a little bit, write some stuff down in the process, but make a little bit of time for it. And if you're not a journaler, then just sit and don't write anything, but find a little bit of time over the course of your day to sit with yourself.
And open your ears.
And be comfortable with the fact that it's going to be uncomfortable at first. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to want to get up and move and go, because that's what we're trained to do, is get up and go. Make some time for that. So, yeah.
So with that, get after it. Make it a great day.
Thanks for joining us today, you guys.
Take care. Make it a good one.
See ya.
That wraps it up for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the Grit Meets Growth tribe. And thanks for growing along with us and being part of this journey together. If you know someone who needs to hear the conversation we had today, please share it. If you got something out of this conversation, please leave us a review. And finally, if you want to make sure you don't miss future episodes, just remember to subscribe. We're thankful for each and every one of you. And as my co-host and good friend Chris Cathers always says, make it a great day.